Yes, I think that's right. I mean, I think what we have to really understand is how important small businesses are to the UK economy. They employ 48% of the British workforce and have a turnover of 1.4 trillion a year, so absolutely vital. And they've had some very challenging years. And put that across the backdrop of continuing difficulties in a tough landscape, it's making it very challenging for small business. And Simply Business has done this report to highlight some of those challenges and get the collective voice of small businesses heard.
And I mean, as things stand, we'll come to some of the recommendations, but as things stand, do you think a decent portion of these businesses would fail and go out of business?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues facing small business is the 32 billion owed to them in late payments. I mean, that means a quarter of small business owners in the UK believe that they will cease trading if business doesn't improve and they don't get these payments in. I mean, when a customer doesn't pay you, they're hanging on to money that is rightfully yours, and chasing debt can be very stressful for small business owners. So I think the government needs to step in and think seriously about what we do about that.
I mean, clearly, as you say, businesses have had a very tough couple of years. I guess the flip side, you could say, is the government has provided quite a lot of support in recent years. And there's a limit, as I guess we got a little glimpse of with the mini-budget last year, to government spending. I mean, what would you say to that, with all of the competing demands on the government for extra spending, given that, of course, they did step up to the plate and support businesses during the pandemic?
That's right. And actually, the government offer lots of support, whether that's startup loans, business bounce loans, free training, childcare support. But the problem is lots of businesses don't know how to access some of that support, and they're not quite sure where to go to get it. I just wish the government would operate, a website where you could put in what your business is, what you turn over, and what support you're entitled to, whether that's free training, helping you cut red tape, helping you manage your debts, helping you with cash flow problems. The support is there. It's just not very easy to access.
That's really interesting. So you're making more of a call about communication than necessarily major policy change.
Well, I think some major policy change could help, particularly in helping small businesses get their payments in time and on time. That would really help them. But the government do offer a lot of support to businesses, but businesses, it's so fragmented across a whole landscape of various different organisations. It's very hard to work out what you're entitled to and piece it all together. So I do think the government could do a lot more in terms of their communication.
I wanted to touch as well on the topic of debt and interest rates. I mean, clearly we talk about it all day long, that rates are going up. It's pressuring many households given rising interest costs. Do you have less sympathy when it comes to businesses that are pressured by rising interest costs? Do business leaders have a greater responsibility to know the risks of taking on too much debt or leverage? Or do you think that the scale with which rates have risen does provide significant, not excuse, but I think you get the drift of my question, that it's gone up so fast no one really could have been prepared for it?
No, I think that's probably right. I mean, look, it was always inevitable when you borrow. Our borrowing has never been higher, and that has pressure on interest rates, and everybody's bearing the brunt of that. If you're a small business owner, attracting customers when they're under financial pressure and keeping those customers, as well as your rising costs, all of those impact your business. So we all have to work harder and smarter and think cleverer about the way we do things and how we borrow money, where we borrow it from. I mean, look, the purpose of banks, they were simply invented to lend businesses and people money. That's part and parcel of their purpose. So having a good relationship with your bank, and if you're having difficulty speaking to your bank, that's often the very most important first port of call.
I'm interested, once we start to come out of some of the pressures, which might not be any time soon, would you rather see the government address corporate tax, which the Chancellor has spoken of as a desire, albeit one that doesn't feel imminent, of his, or business rates? Should the focus be on bigger corporations or helping those small and medium-sized enterprises?
Well, look, I would say it's it would be important to try and help both. You have to encourage people to open businesses, start businesses, run businesses, because that employs people, that generates the taxes that are important. And you need incentives for people to keep investing in business. And that's also important. And business rates are important because there are direct costs that you cannot control. So it's not a variable cost, it's a fixed cost. So both are important, and the government needs to look at all ways in which to help, to encourage people to invest in business, keep running businesses and opening businesses.
I wanted to ask Baroness Brady just a couple of questions related to football whilst we've got you. And our colleague at Sky Sports, Gary Neville, did an interview with Dele Alli late last week. And he spoke very revealingly about his struggles. Now, those struggles for Dele Alli had some specifics attached to them. But I wondered, in your experience, whether you thought that scale of unreported, undisclosed personal struggle exists actually much more widely across Premier League footballers.
Well, I've been involved in football over 30 years, and during that time, I've met a lot of players who have no problems at all, and some that do have problems. The really important thing for any organisation, football in particular, because football clubs, we don't make anything, we don't manufacture anything, we don't produce anything. All of our assets of people are to have a proper structure around everybody to help them with any issues they're facing. And I'm pleased to say at West Ham, a lot of resources are put into that. I mean, I think Dele Alli was very brave in coming forward, and I hope that encourages others to confront some of the issues that they may have and seek help, because only when you realise you've got an issue, you confront it and you seek help to resolve it, can you do something about it. And I think the more people like Dele Alli are role models, and people look up to them, and quite rightly, and admitting that they have flaws and they've had issues and they've dealt with them, I think is a brave and remarkable thing to do.
On a more positive note, and this question comes with full disclosure from an Arsenal fan, and on the fact that my producer Lucy, who's watching very closely, is a West Ham fan. We've been debating about the merits of the Declan Rice transfer. Since it's not my money, I'm obviously just absolutely delighted that we've got him. I wonder, from your perspective, do you feel like you've got a good deal? Did you extract a very rich price?
Well, look, our priority was always to keep Declan as a West Ham player. He's been incredible for us, given 100% at all times, and was our captain, and is a very, very special player. But he made it absolutely clear that he didn't see his future at West Ham. And when that happens, the club has really no choice but to accept the best fee that it can, and then use that money wisely to go and replace him. Of course, we wish him well, but if we had a wish, the wish would have been that he'd have stayed at West Ham. But he made it absolutely clear he wasn't going to extend his contract at West Ham. And at that point, you have no choice but to go into the market and get the best price you could. I think that the price was okay. £105 million on the face of it sounds a lot of money, but footballers are expensive. So it's not really the money we have, it's what we do with that money now. And that's what we're focused on in replacing him and strengthening our team.
Well, we'll be watching to see what happens there, as I'm sure my colleagues at Sky Sports will as well. And just finally, on the topic of the money in the game, I mean, every time you look at it and think it's going to peak out and at least plateau for a little while, some other factor comes along to keep it elevated. The latest being the money that the Saudi Arabian League is pouring into the game. Do you think that experiment, from their perspective as a football experiment, will work, or will it fall by the wayside in the way that China's attempts to create a league by pouring just cash in a sort of slightly unsustainable way into it petered out as well?
Well, look, the Premier League is the best league in the world. It's the most watched. It's the most credible and the most competitive. And that's why people want to invest in it. And you see investors from all over the world. And if you take a very simple rule, if you look at the league table and you put alongside it the amount of money those clubs spend on transfers and wages, you pretty much line up 1 to 20. I mean, of course, you always get clubs that do better than the wage bill would suggest, and those that do worse. But it does take a lot of money and significant investment to build a Premier League team that's capable of competing. And I can see why people are interested in investing in the Premier League. It's exciting, it's fabulous, people love it. And as I say, it's the best league in the world.
Baroness Brady, we thank you so much for your time today. Very much appreciated.